he decided to take my clothes and throw them to the opposite side of the room and would say things like, "You want your clothes? Go ahead and get up and get them." He knew that I would have to get up naked and walk across the room if I wanted to get my clothes. He pinned me up against the wall and started kissing me and touching me. When I was about 27, I was married at this point. I had my oldest daughter, so she was at that time only 2. I had decided to spend the day with someone who I thought was a really good friend of mine. The friend in this story was someone that I had grown up with. I had known him for 15 plus years. Our fathers were in the same line of work, so they were both state troopers. We met each other not only through our dad's line of work, but through church. So I grew up going to church. We got along really well. He came from a big family, and we both had a love of music and, working with kids. And so we were on the praise team together at church. And he was just always a really caring individual. He was very soft-spoken and had never given me a reason ever to not trust him. He had expressed romantic interest in me at a certain point, but was very respectful when I did not return the feelings and when I was, dating somebody else. And yeah, so again, he always seemed very respectful. At this point in time, he was in the academy, in the state police academy, to be a state trooper himself. That had always been his dream. He was doing part-time photography. This particular instance, I was working in the fitness industry and I needed some photos for social media. So it was like a mutually beneficial photo shoot. He said, "I'll take some pictures of you for your social media doing the fitness thing, and then in turn I'll build my portfolio. I just bought a new studio light for my house. I really want to try it out." So it was going to be our first indoor shoot, but again, no red flags. Nothing really struck me odd because of the relationship that we had had to that point. Looking back at it all, they say hindsight is 20/20. It was a very premeditated attack. Didn't realize it when I was in it, but he made it so that I didn't drive myself to his apartment. He picked me up and brought me there, so he was really my only mode of transportation. He lived in a 3rd floor apartment about 30 minutes from me, 40 minutes from me. He had told me that his wife knew I was coming over to do a shoot. That was not true. And around 9:30 a.m., he pulled out a bottle from the fridge, which I thought was extremely odd. I'm not one that's against somebody having a glass of, but at 9:30 in the morning, that seemed very strange to me. He offered me one and I just said, no, it's too early. I don't really want to drink it. And he poured me a glass anyway. Mine sat untouched. But over the course of the day, he would consume pretty much the entire bottle of wine. It started off very subtle, but it started off with kind of positioning me or posing me certain ways and inappropriately touching me as he would, right? So a hand, where it shouldn't be. So it went from, just touching to kissing me on the neck as he's trying to show me a photo that he took. Things started to get physical to the point where, multiple times I was back down on his apartment floor. And he was over me. Kind of like classic you see on the movies, like wrists pinned down to the floor. It's interesting. I think a lot of times victims hear, why didn't you say no? I actually was a victim that said no. I said no many times. It started out, I tried to be kind of nice about it. Like, this is not okay. This should not be happening, to just straight up me saying no over and over, please stop. And it didn't matter. So I think in a lot of those situations, it wouldn't matter anyway. He was physically a lot bigger than me. I was 5'2" and probably 105 pounds at the time. He's easily 6 feet and, probably weighed 180, 185. So physically, I didn't stand much of a chance. The kissing, the making out, and the hands on the body. And then it got to a point where he had undressed me and most of him. But I think being in the state police academy, this is where this kind of comes into play too. He knew how far to push it without there necessarily being physical evidence of what he had done. I say this all the time, even worse than what happened physically was what he did to me in that room, like emotionally. It was like a game to him. And he very much so was manipulative and started playing mind games. You could tell it was about the control. Over the course of the 6 hours, it would turn into things like, I'm at a certain point, I was in a love sack and he had stripped me of my clothing. I just remember feeling really, really vulnerable. I vividly remember looking at him and thinking for the first time ever, I don't know who you are. It was like there was nothing behind his eyes, like they had been stripped of all humanity, and it wasn't the friend that I knew. I just, please give me my clothes back. I was begging at multiple points in time, and he decided to take my clothes and throw them to the opposite side of the room and would say things like, you want your clothes? Go ahead and get up and get them. So that was the game, right? Like he knew that I would have to get up naked and walk across the room if I wanted to get my clothes. I remember in the very beginning trying to think about ways that I could get out of it, but it really didn't take long for my nervous system to just go into an extreme shutdown. At that point, again, survival was the key, and I knew that he was the only way I was going to get home to my husband and my daughter. He was scaring me, and I didn't want to do anything to upset that. In the middle of it all, because it was a photography session, he had his camera. He took hundreds of photos and videos of me, some clothed, some partially clothed, some not clothed at all. And again, that played into his game, like, oh, if you want this, then you're going to pose for this video. Or, if you want to ever leave, then you're going to sit still for this picture. And it was 6 hours of that. He said, are you ready to leave? And I was like, yeah, you're going to take me home. And he said, yeah. And we walked to the door, and right before we exited the door, he pinned me up against the wall and started kissing me and touching me all over again, almost like this is your exit ticket. Like, this is how you get out of here. I don't remember too much after that. I went very numb. I remember getting in his car and him saying, I'm going to go back inside and do one last sweep of the house, of his apartment, his living room. And when he came back down, that's when he took the trash bag out to the recycling bin in the apartment parking lot. And he had found a shirt of mine that had gotten left behind in the living room. And I remember him throwing it at me and saying, oh, it's a good thing I went back and looked. I wouldn't have wanted my wife to come home and see that. When we got home, my husband was home already with my daughter. And I remember him getting out of the car and saying hi to my husband and shaking his hand and thanking him for letting me spend the day with him. I went inside, and it was I've never been so dissociated in my entire life. The only really behavior I remember is I kept Googling what counts as, and that sounds so silly, and it's crazy because in the line of work I do now, so many of my clients say the same thing, and they're like, I feel so stupid. Like, how did I not know that? But that's what you do. I think your nervous system, it's so hard to believe that somebody would do something so violating that your brain is just looking for any kind of rationale or reasoning that isn't that, right? Like, that it can't be the worst case scenario. The guy, my friend, the attacker, had sent me multiple emails trying to get in touch with me, photos that he had edited. He had sent me text messages, and I, at this point, was just ignoring everything that he sent. I wasn't responding. The last email he sent with a picture was basically like, I understand you're probably upset with me. I really hope we can move forward and still be friends, that kind of, not taking any accountability whatsoever. This particular night when I was out of the house, I got a video from him that he had taken that night. And it was one where I was only partially clothed. And he sent it to my phone, and he asked me what I thought of it. Well, my husband was home, and he was using my laptop to do a workout that night, and my messages were coming through on the computer that he was using, and that one popped up. As you can imagine, it did not look good. And so when I got home that night, my husband had packed a bag for him and my daughter, and they were getting ready to leave. I remember, I wanted so hard to stop them, but it was really hard for me to, I hadn't verbalized yet. He finally, thank God, he's such an understanding man. He stopped before he left, and he looked at me and he said, if this was not by choice, if this was done to you, I need you to let me know. And I just was able to shake my head and kind of fall to the ground crying for the first time in weeks. I mean, he knew then. I wasn't able to share any details that night. I kind of just collapsed in his arms and slept for the rest of the night. All I could do was blame myself. It was like, my father is a state trooper. Like, of all people, I should have known what to do. My dad, it destroyed him. And I think he looked at it like, I spent every day of my career helping people and saving people from this kind of situation, and I couldn't save my own daughter. I would just go out and binge on Friday and Saturday nights. But again, to the point of blackouts, me not really remembering what happened that night, taking on a lot of reckless behaviors. I was driving while dissociated. I was going to parties that I didn't know everybody who was going to be there, found myself in some sticky situations there. I became and this is something I will mention because it's so shrouded in shame in the victim space, and it needs to not be. We need to have conversations. I experienced hypersexuality as a result of the trauma. And it's really important for me to say out loud. That was something too that was really difficult to navigate. Especially I was married. So then you have shame on top of that, because this didn't happen to me when I was a 16-year-old girl. It happened to me later in life when I was more established. I really didn't recognize myself at the time. I had a really hard time feeling angry at my perpetrator. I think part of that is just because I knew him for so long prior to as someone who was a safe person for me. Everyone around me felt really angry. I just felt really sad. I grieved the loss of a friend, felt sad that he was a father with a daughter. It took me years into my healing journey to actually allow myself to get angry about it. And I think the first time that I allowed that to happen was 2 years after the assault. I decided to Google his name one day, and I found a document online that it was a court document. He had made some kind of a motion to have his sentence amended because, come to find out, he had been indicted on several felonies, but of them was continual sexual abuse of 2 girls when he was in his early 20s. He was abusing them from the time they were 12, 13 years old until they were of age at 18. It's hard to describe what that did for me. I was sick. I was heartbroken. I was sick. But it was also extremely validating in a way, because when you feel like nobody believes you, to have evidence that he is who I said he is, he is a predator and he is sick and he does these things, and it was right there in writing, right in front of me. He got a slap on the wrist. He got 30 days in jail. You can't even find his name on the offender registry. The somatic work was crucial for me. It allowed me to find safety again, both inside and outside my body. It allowed me to learn ways to regulate my nervous system, to understand why I was stuck in survival states, and even trace some of my core wounding back to childhood, like not being able to trust anyone, and why this wound then hurt so deeply given what I had been through. And then slowly start to work to kind of reframe those beliefs while also being grateful to my body and my nervous system for protecting me the way that it had. Kind of branched out on my own at the beginning of last year. So it's been 1.5 years now of me having my own business, doing the same thing. I'm more into the education training space now. I do see clients still, but yeah, just deepening my understanding of it all and helping people to understand themselves better. And it's been good. It's, I think, important for people to know that it's not something you just get over, right? You don't just move on from it. You don't get over it, and you shouldn't. It's an experience. It happened to you. And that's not what healing is. It's not just moving on or, it's being able to understand your triggers and what makes you feel activated, understand your glimmers and what makes you feel safe, and knowing that your nervous system is meant to exist in this state of pendulation where you just don't want to get stuck in those survival states. You're going to be triggered. You're human, and you're going to get into survival states at times, but we just don't want to get stuck there. We want to be able to enjoy life in the present moment. And that's really what healing's about. It's just being able to find safety again.